speaker from the French Republic. A point of information was raised. MSU, the Minister for Foreign Affairs. State your point of information.
Good morning. I would like to open a debate about changing legal gender. If they are to change their gender, how are we going to classify them? Ladies and gentlemen, we have two classifications of gender, right? The male and female. So those who are the LGBT community, how are we going to classify them? Are you recommending that we should have a third classification, which is the third sex? That's all, thank you.
It was raised that how are we going to classify if we allow these LGBT people to change their legal gender? Is it that if they are a male, wherein they are gays, they have to change their gender into a female gender, or is it for the female who are lesbians, is it that they're going to change it into male? Or are you suggesting for another classification, like for example the third sex, that we are going to consider or try to establish this third sex as one of these generally accepted classification of gender? So may I ask those who are pro to the legalization of the change legal gender?
Could be only the changes that may occur. I am intuit that if a transgender is undergoing sex reassignment, she or he could be a female or a male. Say for example, if you are a gay, if you undergo a sexual reassignment, you are going to be a female. If you are a bisexual, if you are a female, you are going to be a male. And one thing more is, if this would allow homosexuals into a new world, there's a possibility that people may start to build respect from the youngsters for the LGBT community. To end my statement, it's not about who you are, but it's own your natural human and guts to prove how worthy you are, no matter some may not understand you at all.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. All of us are responsible in our own selves. Having the possibility of changing one's sex and one's first name in identity documents is vital for the everyday life of an LGBT person, such as driving license, healthcare, job application, traveling. Right to change legal gender in our country is allowed. The European Court of Human Rights has said in several cases the states that provide transgender persons with the possibility of undergoing surgery leading to full gender reassignment. The court also ruled that states should recognize the change of sex in identity documents. The Yogyakarta Principle No. 3 states, everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. Persons of diverse sexual orientations and gender identities shall enjoy legal capacities in all aspects of life. Each person's self-defined sexual orientation and gender identity is integral to their personality and is one of the most basic aspects of self-determination, dignity, and freedom. No one shall be forced to undergo medical procedures, including sex reassignment surgery, sterilization, or hormonal therapy, as a requirement for legal recognition of their gender identity. no one shall be subjected to pressure to conceal, suppress, or deny their sexual orientation or gender identity. A change of gender is assessed by a commission at the Ministry of Health, and after being approved, the applicant undergoes 1 year of hormonal treatment, which is followed by 1 year of living the role of the other gender, including wearing appropriate dress. After this 2-year treatment, the applicant's sex may be surgically changed. These conditions for LGBT people and their sexual orientation reflects more mature development on the issue of human rights. Czech Republic shall reiterate that these people deserve the highest treatment we could ever foster. They are not a jinx of society. Thank you.
The Russian Federation. President Alexandra Solzhenitsyn.
For everybody's information, there is such association in Europe called the ILGA. It stands for Association of Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Trans, and Intersex in Europe. They make an annual survey on the rights of LGBT. So, according to the survey, Russia ranked number 49 out of 49 country members of this association. So Russia is the least protected country member of this association. However, among the rights indicated, Russia recognized only the rights to change legal gender and the right to join military services since 1997. So in conclusion, I agree on the motion to consider the right to change legal gender of the LGBTs only for the documentary purposes. Espasibo.
The status of transvestite, transsexual, or other transgender persons in Indonesia is complex. Cross-dressing is not per se illegal, and some public tolerance is given to some transgender people working in beauty salons or in the entertainment industry. However, the law does not protect transgender people from discrimination or harassment. It also does not provide for sex change operations or allowing transgender persons to gain new legal documents after they have made the transition. In addressing the issue raised by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the French Republic, I suggest that we put the members of the LGBT community in a third category, which is to be called the third sex. And in addition, they should put their categorization under this category, which will either be lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. Therefore, I'd like to end this debate by calling for a previous question.
So again, the debate, there is an attempt to suppress now the debate. So is there any objection regarding the suppression of this debate? Since there is no objection, let us now vote on the motion to call for the previous question. And we have obtained 2/3 votes favoring the call for the previous question. So you may now enter your votes on the motion that LGBT people shall have the right to change their legal gender.
Buenas grandes. I, Juan Alfonso Amero, representante de Mexico, will commence a motion. I move that LGBT have the right to enter and participate in the empowerment of politics in entire aspects. As to their legality, most homosexuals are authorizing to enter in politics and have the legal rights to join the military. On the other hand, due to the equality of rights upon the law, LGBT are sufficient enough to be in part of military and political fields. Most of them invoke their rights of expression to be specific stability, to inherit their qualifications in entering and participating the basis of military and political fields. In fact, there are 3 perspective essentials that my represented country, Mexico, has considered about LGBT. One, in the field of politics. LGBT are more intellect to handle a group of people in a society and compromises leadership over each members. Second, in the field of military, most of the LGBTs are strategic enough to initiate plans and to be considered as tactics among troops.
So there is a point of information from Pakistan.
Just wanted this speaker to talk fluently because maybe some of us cannot hear the speech well. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
That's actually a parliamentary. I know. Thank you. From Pakistan. So please speak fluently and spontaneously.
The third part, the LGBT does not threat the intention of joining and participating in this aggressive field. My delegates, there is no qualification in joining the military field. Whoever you are, what gender you are, there is no qualification in it. However, we need to qualify in our strengths and abilities, but there is no excuses that LGBT have no rights to this. They have the right. They have the right to enter and participate in the military and political field in spite of their stability and their proficiency. That's all. Thank you.
So, good morning, I just want to share the side of my country concerning the empowerment of politics of LGBT people. In 2012, President Rafael Correa appointed Corina Banche, a lesbian activist, as the country's health minister. Also, in the 2013 elections, activist Diane Marie Rodriguez of Salveta X Association became the first openly transgender candidate who ran for office, and President Rafael Correa showed his respect for the work of the social activists. Secretary General, I cite some data. Why should LGBT people get involved in politics? Stonewall is a gay, lesbian, and bisexual charity. So, why should LGBT people get involved in politics? The answer that wherever decisions are being made, whether in parliament or in a school council, different people with different experiences help ensure those decisions are as relevant as possible to the whole community. People can contribute new ideas and perspectives that others may not have considered. Having lesbian, gay, and bisexual people around the table with their diversity of experiences benefits everyone. Research shows that there remain significant issues that our decision makers need to address. For example, homophobic bullying in schools is endemic. 3/4 of homophobic hate crimes are not reported to the police, and health services still fail to provide inclusive healthcare to lesbian and gay patients. Getting involved in politics gives you the opportunity to raise these issues and others that concern you with the people that make the decisions. You could also be one of the people making decisions by standing for elected office. Political parties and other campaign groups have come a long way in representing LGBT people. There are no more openly lesbian, gay, and bisexual politicians at the local and national level and across the political spectrum than ever before. I remember my friend once told me that to gain success, we must unite. And to be united, we must first learn how to accept things we can change. That's right.
Good morning, co-delegates. For the majority of its existence, LGBT Denmark has been a lobby for gays and lesbians. But since 2002, bisexuals, and since 2008, trans persons has also been officially included. LGBT Denmark aims to work for gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender peoples and political, social, cultural, and workplace equality at every level of society. Denmark is openly for LGBT and entering leadership or politics. Mr. Secretary General, may I ask you to allow me to present you the examples of the politics or leaders of the Denmark.
Is there any objection? There being no objections, proceed.
Simon Emil Abisol is openly gay and is in civil partnership with another man, with Henning Olsen. Simon Emil Abisol, he is notable for being the only Danish member of parliament to have been member of 3 different parties in less than a year. Second example is Klaus Bondam. Klaus Bondam is a radical Venstre political party and ran for mayor of Copenhagen in this November 2005. The other is OPL Bai, the Minister of Culture since 2011 to 2012. Another one is Louis Ribert. Louis Ribert is in openly gay and is registered partnership with another woman. Louis Ribert she was elected as member of parliament of the Danish People's Party and the election and elected in 2005. In terms of the military services in Denmark, Denmark is not banned from military services, allowing the LGBT to join the military services from 1978. We believe in Denmark that there are rooms for improvement. LGBT Denmark is positive social policy, nevertheless has a military well known for its broad tolerance of openly gay soldiers. Thank you. Point of information. One of the candidates for City Councilor of Salvador Bahia, the 3rd largest city in Brazil that won the seat, was Leo Cret, a trans fertile club dancer, and was the most voted of the candidates. So when he took office, he defied the dress code norms, insisting that his wardrobe would be strictly feminine and insisted on using the women's restroom. Yes to the rights of the LGBTs. Yes to the LGBT empowerment to politics.
So with regards to the entering of LGBT in military fields, there have been several cultures which have looked favorably on homosexual behavior in military, but the LGBT should not be allowed to serve openly in the military. The physical, sexual, and psychological such as harassment and bullying are the violence faced by LGBT in entering the military, wherein an inherently violent environment is present. LGBT people may face violence unique to their community, and to prevent such, we should not allow them to enter into military. Thank you.
Morning, my co-leaders. Once again, I'm here to present to you the Singapore first openly gay politician. He is Dr. Vincent Vijay Singha. Born in 1970, is an academic, civil activist, and a politician from Singapore. He was a member of the opposition Singapore Democratic Party in 2010 to 2013. He served as the party's treasurer and stood as a parliamentary candidate for the party 2011 general election. Another achievements of Dr. Vijay Singha is he served as the executive director of the Transit Workers Count 2, a non-government organization advocating the rights of low-wage migrant workers. He also publishes scholarly papers on social work and has worked as a lecturer in social work at Sim University. Mr. Vijay Singha is known to dress up like a man, so there is no alteration, modesty, or indecency in the profession of Dr. Vijay Singha. Thank you.
Good morning. Everyone has the right to serve their own country. In our country, Portugal, I must say that gays and lesbians are allowed to serve in military service. This gives rise with the latest global figures and acceptance of homosexuality, which suggests that tolerance of LGBT communities is only becoming more widespread in secular affluent countries. A progressive policy
toward gay and lesbians, soldiers does not invariably guarantee that LGBT citizens are immune to discrimination in that particular society. Persons are free to serve in military. Activists lament that there remains room for empowerment. LGBT is capable to serve in military.
I support the motion of Prime Minister George of Ecuador. This is to substantiate his motion about the adoption of empowerment of LGBT to politics. May I present to you the stand of my country. In Japan, they didn't discriminate those people who belong to LGBT. In fact, they are members of LGBT who stand firm to run for public office. They really encourage the Japanese people to support them, not because who they are, but rather because of their intentions to serve and to give quality services to the Japanese people. And in 2003, Aya Kamikawa became the first openly transgender politician to be elected to public office in Japan. And in 2005, Kanaku Tsuhi from the Osaka Prefectural Assembly became the first homosexual politician to formally come out the Tokyo Game Festival. And in 2011, Aiga Ishikawa became the first openly gay candidate elected to office in Japan. Thus, if we allow LGBT to enter into politics, equality and unity prevails in our country. That is why I, the Prime Minister of Japan, I formally move for the adoption of empowerment of LGBT to politics. Arigatou gozaimasu.
Good morning, fellow listeners. Lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and transgender have no place in the government. That is mine and China's stand on this issue of empowerment of the LGBT community and politics. We believe that this kind of disruption in the face of government poses a kind of scandal, and it's not acceptable to our people. What will politicians look like if we allow this? Soon enough, we will be allowing prostitutes inside the respective office of our government. We should be the models of our constituents. We should be morally upright. Our leaders must be morally upright. Thank you.
But ladies and gentlemen, perhaps LGBT people, when given the opportunity in government, might abuse power by becoming aggressive in lawmaking. That is laws concentrated more to their rights. That's all. Thank you.
This is for those who do not agree to the empowerment of LGBT people to politics. Can you give us some data or differences of, between a LGBT people to a male and a female in line with military? Repeat my question. Can you cite some differences between an LGBT people to a male or a female in line with military?
So are you talking, Mr. Speaker, on the performance of between LGBT and those non-LGBT?
Yes.
So those who have any data to present to suffice the question at hand, do you have any data?
So to all the delegates that gathered here today, Buenos Dias. I, Tiago Romero, the representative of Argentina, will propose a motion that LGBT must have a fair and a good treatment in employment. As we all know, there were still discrimination regarding LGBT. So, It is that we hear issues in line employment that the LGBT were not treated well and does not get the job because of their gender identity. In our country, Argentina, the Argentine Federation of LGBT people continues fighting discrimination in the workplace by means of an agreement with the General Federations of Trade Unions in Argentina. These agreements have encouraged the creation of more inclusive workplaces for sexually diverse people. It aims at guaranteeing equal opportunities for LGBT people at work and encourage their inclusion in trade union activities. Moreover, the agreement reflects the Argentine Federation of LGBT and Trade Union commitment to work for the respect and promotion of human rights, social inclusion, the eradication of discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender identity, HIV or AIDS, and the fight for more rights for LGBT people. They are people with great capabilities in shaping our economic growth. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, let's fight discrimination in LGBT for equal rights and for human rights. That's all. Muchas gracias.
So it is a motion that we are going to empower LGBT people in their employment or in the workplace. So are there any supporting discussion? Yes, from Ireland.
On my
This is Tracy. Greetings from Dublin, Ireland to you, fellow delegates. Discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation is outlawed by the Employment and Equality Act of 1998 and the Equal Status Act of 2000. These laws forbid discrimination in any of the following areas: employment, vocational training, advertising, collective agreements, the provision of goods and services, and the other publicly available opportunities. In my country, Ireland, we don't discriminate these fellow LGBTs, but rather we empower them to promote themselves into the land of work. The protections provided remain uneven. As pointed out, page 2016 review, the Journal of the Public Service, Executive Union, July to August 2014, Section 81E of the Pensions Act of 1990, as amended by the commissioners who retired more than 1 year before the Civil Partnership Act 2010. From challenging the refusal of survivors' pension of the civil partner, the government uses this section to block illegal attempts by LGBT people to obtain pensions. These LGBT people shall known to have a lot of work done by themselves. By 36% of the population of Ireland is composed of these LGBTs. Therefore, 30% of the success of my country is allotted to them. So thank you.
To all of us. As a representative of the Dutch people, I am proud to say that the Netherlands has become one of the most socially liberal countries in the world. Recent polls indicating that over 90% of ethnic Dutch people view homosexuality as moral. LGBT and gender equality offers people the opportunity to make the most of their lives and to make choices in freedom and safety. The Dutch people therefore advocates LGBT and gender equality, the emancipation of girls and women, and emancipation of lesbian, women, gay men, bisexual women and men, and transgender people. Everyone has the right to life without violence and a right to equal opportunities to participate. Discrimination will therefore be combated and severely penalized. Equality under the law and equality of men and women and of homosexuals and heterosexuals should be a matter of course. Giving the LGBTs the right to empowerment to employment gives the LGBTs the chance to show and develop the true potential as a manpower to boost the economic stability without worrying about discrimination in the working environment. This also entails respect for differences and tolerance of the beliefs of others. The balance of basic rights is one of the core values of Dutch society. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary General. Good morning to each and everyone. I, Ambassador Sylvie Lucas, from the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg, hereby to share one of the cases that convinced Luxembourg and other European countries to strengthen the empowerment and employment of LGBTs. In the case of P versus S and Cornwall County Council, complainant P is an employee of Cornwall Council. She, who brought an action against Manager S and Cornwall County Council before the Industrial Council, on the ground that she had been a victim of sex discrimination. P, to minor and major surgical operations to have physical attributes of women. After her surgery, she was dismissed from her work. My dear co-delegates, is it right and just is it right and just to dismiss an employee only by the reason that she is an transgender? According to the European Court of Justice, they ruled that there had been a violation of the principle of equal treatment in the context of working conditions, more precise conditions governing dismissal. Ladies and gentlemen, to tolerate such discrimination wouldn't be right and just. The court found that right not to be discriminated against on the grounds of sex is one of the fundamental human rights whose observance the court has a duty to ensure. And that the principle of equality is one of the fundamental principles of community law. Therefore, the empowerment and employment of LGBTs be approved. Thank you.
The right of LGBT people in their right to expression.
In past years, same-sex relationships are illegal in 76 countries, and the death penalty may be invoked as punishment in at least 5 countries. Other discriminations suffered by the LGBT community include discrimination in work, healthcare, education, detention, and torture. Today, though other countries accept LGBT community, the right to expression is still not granted. The right to expression shall include the lifestyle preferences and the right to form social organizations of the LGBT. With that, I move to give the LGBT the right to expression.
Russia banned homosexual propaganda to minors under 18 at federal level. Some regions have their own legislation banning propaganda of homosexuality, bisexuality, and/or transgenderism. There are a lot of bad impacts that occur because of freedom of expression, such as demonstrations, pornography, sexual abuses, violence, and even corruption. Because of freedom of expression has been in the wrong way, it should be limited by the government. First, freedom of expression has always been misunderstood as freedom to give opinion without regarding others' rights. Many people become more selfish after freedom of expression was implemented. Many people think that they are completely right while others are wrong. If there's a problem, they just like to speak, not to listen to others. They won't appreciate others' argument unless others' argument has same way with their opinion and support each other. Their stubborn attitude make every single problem that occurs in our country, Russia, become difficult to get an agreement and solution. Second impact is most of the people always make freedom of expression as an excuse to do whatever they want. They make an anarchism as a form of expression. Because of this action, society becomes chaos. Third, the implementation of freedom of expression of the LGBTs brings more bad impacts. There are demonstrations, separatism, pornography, and violence. Pornography as an expression of art occurs everywhere and becomes an epidemic to the society. Some people say that freedom of expression must not be limited. They argue that according to the meaning of freedom itself, freedom is not appropriate with limitation. Excuse me. Furthermore, we have felt how our freedom of expression was limited in Russia. I agree that freedom is not appropriate with limitation, but is it worth if we are free to do whatever we want, even break the law and our way of life in the name of freedom of expression? I don't think so. This regime usually uses military power to punish every LGBT that gave his or her opinion about promoting rights of LGBTs in Russia. But that was a form of limitations on freedom of expression. That was just a form of... This limitation is just to control our freedom of expression so that its implementation will still be for the betterment of the people's way of life. Government should consider limitation for its implementation of freedom of expression as one solution to stabilize our life. In Russia, the law inflicts hefty fines on anyone who imposes non-traditional sexual relations on minors. The adopted bill puts at risk organizations, activists, mass media, and any person who would dare to speak or spread information about LGBT issues in a positive or neutral way, thus endangering and even dramatically limiting freedom of expression, association, and assembly for those who support equality of LGBT rights. To end this, ladies and gentlemen, I say no to the proposed motion, which is to consider the right of expression of the LGBTs. Thank you.
From China, the gay community continues to gain acceptance, but it's a slow process. Part of the problem is that China's government is wary of activists gathering to support inequality. Whether it's gay rights, environmental protection, or the ultimate dating norm, democracy. LGBT groups have had their events, from film festivals to parades. Shut down at the last event, not because the government opposes gay rights, but because it opposes organized mass events in general. As Yang, organizer of Asian queer film festivals, told the economics in China, everything is political. Given this limitation, it's hard for LGBT activists to create an organized campaign on behalf of gay rights, including gay marriage. In conclusion, LGBT expression in China is accepted, but limited.
I would suggest that lifestyle preferences should be limited, that the members of the LGBT community should use or wear decent attires in public places, and the social organizations formed by LGBT, specifically their ideals, purposes, and philosophies, should not be detrimental to states. Instead, it must be in conformity with the law. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call for the previous question.
By allowing each one of us to have the right to reservation on this convention, meaning to say, if in a particular provision of this treaty you do not agree to such provision, you can only state or provide such amendments on a particular provisions. So we are now to establish or to go on signing by applying the principle of alternate